You're listening to the Business Brain Food Podcast. This is episode 144.
Welcome to the Business Brain Food Podcast, the show business owners listen to when they want to take their business to the next level. Head to businessbrainfood.com.au to catch up on past episodes and access show notes from every interview. Now, here's your host, Ben Futrell.
Well, g'day and welcome back to another episode of Business Brain Food. This, my friend, is the podcast that's 100% devoted to taking you and your business to the next level. And the good news is, it doesn't matter whether you're brand new to this business thing, so maybe you're scratching that entrepreneurial itch, or maybe you're like myself and you've been in business for a long, long time. No matter what, there is always something new we can do to take our business to this level. Always get a bit of air guitar going during this intro. Oh yeah, listen to that. Oh, love it. Now, today's absolutely no different. In fact, today I've got a lady called Patty Alper on the show, and Patty's doing some amazing things in the US that I think you're going to love, and as a business owner are going to inspire you to give back. Now, when you think about the benefits of giving, this is going to really transform the way you think about giving on a business level to people that are in school or universities, and teaching them how to be entrepreneurs and closing that skills gap, which is what it's all about. Now, before I do get stuck into that interview, I wanted to remind you that if you haven't already, jump into the iTunes store and leave a review or rating. Take a screen capture of that and email it to ben@maxmyprofit.com.au, and in return, I'm going to give you access to a 1-hour training on improving the user experience on your website. Now, why is that important? Because when people come to your website, the UX or the user experience will determine how long they stay and how well they convert and how much stuff they buy from you or how often they contact you. So this particular training is a client access only training that we had available that I'm going to make available for you if you leave a review and you copy that review and email it across to Ben@MaxMyProfit. That's what we're going to do. Now, the reason I need you to copy and email it to me is because some of the usernames on iTunes are quite oblique and quite hard to know who they are. So if you send that through, I'll make sure you get your access to that free 1-hour training on the 3 critical factors of user experience on your website. And I know you'll love it. I mean, I've been through the training myself, and it made me change several things on my website that have had an impact already. So it's easy for you to get a hold of that. Now, if you're brand new to the podcast, thanks so much for tuning in. Welcome to the Business Brain Food Podcast. You've got 143 previous episodes to catch up, so get going on those. If you're a long-time listener, welcome back. So great to see you here again. All right, so today I've got Patty Alper coming onto the show. Now, Patty is the author of a book called Teach to Work, and you're going to hear about this from Patty more so than me. I'm not going to tell you too much right now, but Patty's done some amazing things and has been in the field of all sorts of things business, but mostly marketing, communication and sales for 35 years. Successfully served firms in real estate, hospitality, finance, non-profit sectors or through her consulting practice that she has, which is called the Alper Portfolio Group. And for 18 years, she's been a trustee of the Alper Foundation, and it is her philanthropic giving that she's become engaged with the Network for Teaching Entrepreneurship, which is what she calls Nifty, NFTE, and how she's ultimately then developed the Adopt the Class program, which is about adopting a class and mentoring kids in school to be entrepreneurs. And when you hear the story and some of the things that Patty is doing, some of the letters that she has received from the kids that she's helped, I think you're going to love it. The key things you're going to get out of this episode are how you can give back to the community, number one, how it's going to benefit you internally in your business, you or your team members, because it has a huge impact on them as well, and how it's going to help you with recruitment and marketing your business. So without any further delay, let's get Patty Alper onto the Business Brain Food Podcast.
Business Brain Food.
So Patty, a big welcome to the Business Brain Food Podcast.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here and to talk with you, Ben.
Hey, my absolute pleasure. The pleasure is all ours. Now, before we do get stuck into chatting about, Teach to Work and, the program that you've been working on, I'm going to find out something a little bit quirky about yourself.
It's time for something quirky. And now, something quirky.
I don't know how quirky this really is, but I happen to love business. I love strategy. I love understanding who my competition is and coming up with something creative and winning. That is probably a common thing, but it's something I learned about myself at sort of in my early 30s, and I don't get to say it too often, but I very strategic, and I love coming up with ideas to be creative and set my company apart.
Yeah, great stuff. Good quirkiness to have. A handy quirkiness.
Yeah, it's useful. I didn't know I had it, so it was sort of quirky to me. How's that?
Very useful. All right. Well, now you've released a book called Teach to Work, and there's some amazing stuff going on within organisations that you're going to share with us today. Now, before we do get stuck into chatting about that, maybe you could tell us a bit about how your past and how you've got to where you are. What's the Patty Alper story?
Most related to, I think, your audience is I come from a business background. I was one of the first women in the field of construction, commercial construction. This was in America, in the Mid-Atlantic region, and I kind of fell into this. We were one of the first companies to be automated, and we wanted to very much professionalize our industry. And I really had to teach myself from the ground up. I built a marketing campaign, wrote a huge strategic plan, and it grew to be an extremely successful company. And one of the ways that happened, maybe more than you need to know, but construction often functions by bidding. And you're at the end of a chain of many other industries, brokerage, architecture. And we wanted to change that paradigm. We wanted to come in earlier. So we, with our automated systems, came in at the lease table when companies were moving, and we helped negotiate lease terms. And we became construction consultants. And in 4 short years, we grew to about 100 management level employees. We had very large, multi-thousand square foot corporate headquarter assignments. So it was very, very thrilling. And I'd say it was a pivotal turning point for me in my life. And as I got older, I learned about an organization called NFTE. We are not in Australia, but we are in many countries and all over America, and that stands for the Network for Teaching Entrepreneurship. And so I could marry my love of business with giving back. And this program comes into all inner city, I don't know if you know the term Title I, but that means they're very poor schools where kids have to get free lunch programs. And this program comes in and teaches youth the concepts of business, where they have to take their own idea, build a business plan, and defend it. So I came up with the idea of developing a model actually for myself, Ben, because I figured maybe these kids could learn something from me too. They have a teacher. The teacher's trained to teach business, but wouldn't it be fun to learn from people who are doing it, who are out on the street, who can share their struggle and their pain and their victory? So I started a program. It was called Adopt a Class. For this one nonprofit, and I did it for a year, and a classroom became like my laboratory. I carved out a role that fit in with the business person, didn't interrupt the classroom, but taught kids real life skills. So where the kids might have learned to write a plan in the class, we, as mentors, would help them actually launch companies. We would provide seed capital. We would help them differentiate themselves. We would help them take their product or service to market, turn a profit, and then they really owned something. They'd accomplished something. So I don't know if you can hear it in my voice, but I've been doing that now for 17 years. And I have countless letters from students of how this has changed their life. And the theory behind how I came to write the book is I figured, mentorship in business worked for me, But there's no reason why scientists and IT professionals and engineers and accountants and artists and journalists and radio hosts can't all be mentors. Everybody has life experience, and our kids are falling behind. So that's kind of the premise. I've tried to bridge this sort of two sectors of business and academics because the world of youth are falling behind. They can't find jobs.
Yeah.
There is an enormous.
I think what you're doing is an amazing thing, and there's a lot of, like I said, a lot of people at school, not just in. So what do you call them? Tier 1, or what was it you said they were? These poor schools.
Oh, in America, it's called Title I schools.
Title I, okay, yeah. So are you also doing this in other schools as well, or just in these Title I schools? Is that just where it started?
Well, there's no reason mentorship couldn't happen in every single school. And I'm thinking high school, community college, university. There's no reason. It happens at a PhD level. It happens with doctors. It happens in some fields, but it could be happening much earlier and excite and motivate kids in new ways and teach them hard, real skills that are applicable.
Yeah. Now, can you give us an example of maybe one of these projects, or one of these kids had come up with one of the business ideas that you've seen now flourish into something? I mean, you've been doing it for 17 years. I'd love to hear one of these success stories.
Oh my gosh, I have so many, and and I will tell you that the book is laced with them because, of course, it's much more fun to read real stories. But here's one I love. This one young man, his name was Khalid, and he was transferred into this business class in December, so he was late. He was only 14. He was the youngest. It's usually a little bit older kids, usually kind of 15 to 18 in high school. Anyway, we go around the class and we ask everybody what their business ideas are, and he didn't raise his hand. He wouldn't talk. So afterwards, we kind of pulled him aside and said, "Tell us about yourself." And he was too shy to say in front of everybody. So we kind of pulled out of him some ideas, things that he's passionate about, and he loves food. And he ended up creating a business around cookies. Now, I don't know if you have these in Australia, because I'm sorry, I've never been there. You'll have to have me, Ben.
Yeah, you need to come down under one day. Happy to have you.
But there's these famous cookies. They're called New York black and white cookies. And he learned how to make them. But we, as mentors, pushed him to differentiate. How could he be different? We didn't tell him why or how. We just said, you have to be a little bit unusual to stand out and create a new market for yourself. So he played around with the recipe and ultimately made these, they're 6 inches. They're as big as your hand, big cookies. He ended up making them with honey. And he did the calculations for the nutrition, and they were 106 calories. So he took out enormous amounts of sugar. And he put the calculations, the nutrition, on the back of the cookie. And he ended up going to a commercial kitchen and renting it out to make the cookies. By 16 years old, he had sold 32,000 cookies.
Wow.
He won the region-wide business plan competitions that the program put on. And then he actually went to the nationals. He was so successful. And he got over his shyness, and he stood up and he presented this business plan. It was unbelievable. And actually, I'm going to read you right here from the book. He wrote me a beautiful little note. Here it is. This was at the end of the class. Dear Miss Patty, I remember the first day I was in class and you were asking everyone to describe their business. I was the only one who didn't have one, and I really didn't care. At that time, business was not one of my goals, but the way you talked about it and gave everyone advice Because of that, I decided to accept the challenge. If it weren't for you, I wouldn't be where I am today, running my own business and loving what I'm doing. So, I mean, how often do you get letters like that in your life?
Yeah, that's
right?
amazing. Amazing. You've made a difference to that boy's life, that's for sure.
Well, it's great fun, and I know we all have it in us. We all have built some level of knowledge and expertise.
Just in that example there, I mean, where do you think, mentoring obviously played a big part in getting him to where he was. If it wasn't for the mentoring, what do you think would have happened?
I think he's a really bright kid, but I know he was turned on, I think, by really what I was just saying before, hearing we would share our struggle and our pain and our success and our love and passion for business. And, so often, I don't know if you remember this for you in school, but school is often theory and memorization and testing. And it doesn't connect the dots oftentimes for kids.
Too often it doesn't.
Yeah, what am I going to do with this? So when they hear real people, it opens their eyes to possibility. I met this woman who did her PhD dissertation on this work, on mentorship and particularly around entrepreneurship, actually. And she says a lot of these kids live in place A. They only know what they know in their life. And place B for them is just removed. That they can look at Beyonce or Barack Obama or, you're very far from what they can fathom what life is really like. But when you walk in the class and you're a regular person who struggled and they hear your pain, they can connect. So she calls that helping them to transport to place B. All of a sudden, you make a connection for them. By being there, you're accessible and you're sharing your story. So I'm suggesting that everybody can be doing some of this, and that more importantly, the kids are falling behind. I do not know the unemployment rate in Australia, but I can tell you in many other countries, there is an enormous skills gap. The jobs are changing. We can talk about that. Lots and lots of companies cannot find the kind of employees that they're looking for. The schools are not preparing kids to enter the workforce with the skills that the employers are looking for. So in doing the book and in doing research, I've interviewed in the book, actually, and even later now on my blog, I have huge companies like MasterCard and Comcast and 3M and Pfizer. And they all have these mentoring programs because, well, there's a million reasons why they have them. I was very surprised to learn this in interviewing them. But the primary reason is they cannot find the types of employees with the skills they're looking for.
Yeah.
So they have to go help teach them themselves.
And we've seen like the airlines have done this for a long time, and the Army does it here in Australia. They have the Army Reserves, and these are platforms for them to be able to train up younger recruits and bring them in through what we call in Australia traineeships. Is that the type of thing you're talking about with these companies? They're bringing people in and training them, or they're going out somewhere to their schools, to their universities, and mentoring them through that avenue. Is that what's happening?
They are. They're going out to schools, and then that is sort of a first step in building a relationship and teaching skills. Yeah, because the
hiring thing's a big problem, I think, worldwide. I don't think it's just America. Unemployment rates are going to differ from country to country, but I think the skills gap, or what you're calling the skills gap there, is a growing problem worldwide. There's plenty of organisations struggling to hire people with the right skills. Do you feel that by participating in mentoring people that are still at school or in universities are going to help close that skills gap?
I do. And I can give you a couple of reasons why. I'd like to share with you, first of all, what is the skills gap and where is it coming from? And what are the perceptions? There's sort of three narratives right now about why there is a skills gap. The first one is there are no more jobs. It's gone to globalization. They've gone overseas. The second narrative is that there are jobs, but there are not skilled workers. Just in the Manufacturers Association report, just came out a month ago, they say by 2025, there'll be 2 million jobs available, and they cannot find skilled workers. I just attended the Aspen Institute Idea Festival. I heard this. I met people from Google. I met people from Toyota. I met people from Ernst & Young. Same problem. They cannot find adequate skills in students. So that's another narrative. A third narrative is educators, sort of the same thing, are not preparing youth for the skills that are required, and the jobs are changing. So it's an issue. Gallup, have you heard of Gallup? They're a huge polling company.
Yes.
They did an enormous study saying that, first of all, 98% of chief academic officers believe they are preparing kids for the workforce. But when they talk to corporate executives, 89% do not agree. 89% of corporate executives. So their study was researching what are the absolute best ways we can prepare youth to have a better job and a better life, ultimately. How can educators do that? And students are twice as likely to have a better work life if they have two things. And that's what we're talking about here today. If they have a mentor, an adult, either a professor or an adult mentor, to help sort of foster their goals and dreams. And two, if they apply their learning to a real project, if they do something, either a long-term project while they're in school or an internship. So that's what we're talking about, sort of building that pathway from while they're in school to connecting the dots and doing some real world activities. Am I making sense?
Yeah, absolutely. Do you think that, you said there before that the Gallups did that poll where they found that the schools felt they were delivering and preparing the kids for the real world, yet, we know they're not, and, a vast majority there, but 89% of corporations said they're not. Is that part of the problem, though? Maybe the schools or the professors in the schools need mentoring to be better at mentoring the kids?
Maybe the professors could be better mentors, but sometimes professors haven't been in the real world. They're also in an isolated bubble. So when you I'll give myself as an example from the construction industry, not that any of the kids wanted to go into an industry that I was in, but they saw my passion and they saw me joyful in what I was doing and how did I get there and what was my route. And I'm suggesting that the same thing would happen if it's an engineer. I have examples. The other piece that the book begins to talk about, that it's based on the experience of building the business plan. But I'm suggesting that, let's say you take a science class or even a marketing class. If you bring in a communications person as a mentor to a high school marketing class or a community college marketing class, and that student has a long-term project throughout the course of that year, and they have guidance from a real professional while they're developing this project, then they're learning a real skill. They're finding, and if you kind of break down what is a project, first you have to find a need. What's the need in the world? What do you want to, like Khalid and his cookie? What need do you want to fill? And how are you going to do it differently? And then what's involved with the project? What's involved with a plan? Let's break it down. What are the costs? What's the research? Who's the audience? How am I going to serve them? How will I serve them better? So it requires forethought and planning and thinking. And then you have an impact, and you may find that you're wrong, or you have to change in mid plan, right? And all of these things are teaching real work skills, critical thinking. And then you have to change. So you have to have adaptive thinking. You have to reorder yourself on a different trajectory because it didn't work out. And that's life, right?
Yeah. Good lesson right there.
Exactly. And then you have to stand up and present. Here's my plan. Here's what I've done. And here's how it's worked. And here's who it's impacting. And you have to defend it. So all of these skills are teaching kids skills that are necessary in the workforce. It's sort of this blend of hard skills and soft skills. You have to build a timeline, you have to forecast, you have to research, you have logistics, you have to be accountable, you're doing problem solving, you have obstacles, you have communications, and you have impact. What's your measurement? How'd you do? He sold 32,000 cookies. I mean, that you can measure that. So, I mean, I didn't have that in high school. Did you?
No, absolutely not. And it would have been great if I would have loved it if they did that.
Wouldn't you? It would make learning much more fun.
Well, it makes it practical. I was very good at the practical things, and I think that's the whole left brain, right brain thing. I was always very good at things like art, music, woodworking, all the technical, practical things I was good at. And if they could turn some of the other studies into something that was practical, I definitely would have done much better, So I think it's a big plus. As a business owner myself, and thinking about the team that I have within my business, you've said that I can close the skills gap and I can start to make sure that there are, the new generation coming out of school are going to be better prepared for the workforce. What are the benefits are they for me as a business to be able to me to go and mentor or become or contribute in this space?
Well, it's a really interesting question. Maybe I'll start by telling you a story. I met the fellow that built, now this isn't for a small business, but I think there's things to take away from it. Pfizer, when they started their mentoring program, was back actually in the 50s. And they were in two locations at the time. One was in England and one was in, I believe, Connecticut. And the face of Pfizer at the time, as I understood the story, was this big corporation that was faceless. And this was it didn't even begin with the top of the company, the CEO. It actually started with some of the employees. They went out into the community and started helping science teachers and mentoring science students. And what happened was all of a sudden, the same families that go to school are the same families that go to the doctors and that go to the pharmacies. So all of a sudden, Pfizer no longer was this faceless entity that took over the town. It was now humans that were helping. And they created growth in sales because the pharmacists and the doctors were very appreciative of all the work they were doing with the families, even of the doctors themselves. So it builds a wonderful network just from a public relations standpoint. But I'll go through some of the other takeaways that I've heard from many, many of these companies that I've talked to. Here's a few. One, millennials in this day and age want to work for a company that does good. They don't want to work for a company any longer that is just profit driven. They like some element of a company doing good. And this is, I actually have this commented from Howard Schultz from Starbucks as well. He has had millennials look at his website and see some of the philanthropic work that they're doing, and would prefer to work for them, for a company that's doing good. So for HR, hiring is easier because of some of this good works. Others have said that the culture of the employees changes. They come back after their experience in a school or working with these kids. The people from Pfizer said, there was one man that worked there for 30 years and he never had a breakthrough drug. He never did one thing that was a huge breakthrough. But when he went to class, he saw a light bulb go off for a kid. And that was as meaningful as a breakthrough drug. As a matter of fact, I'm going to read you this quote. I love this quote. Right at the very beginning here. Wait a minute. Chapter 1. This is the fellow who led the whole volunteer program, which, by the way, they ended up spending $100 million a year.
Wow, significant.
Employees want to be part of something that is bigger than a company. The business culture is internally based, but the philanthropy is external. That volunteer ethos provides something more than a quarterly return on earnings. It stretches employees beyond their day-to-day job. So company after company have said that the culture begins to change. People are happier to be there. They feel a sense of greater individual fulfillment, and they are grateful to their company for broadening their horizon, because many of these people would never have had that opportunity of their own volition. So now they have this new experience. So it makes them more loyal. They want to stay working there. So you wouldn't think of all of this. I had to do all this research to learn this. The other thing, like Ernst & Young said this. If you take an executive, a mid-level manager, and let's say an administrator, and you put the three of them in a classroom together, you cross-pollinate from different sort of levels within the company, and they come back and they're more bonded. They've gotten to know each other in a unique way, and all of their horizons have been expanded, and they've done something good together. There are other sort of benefits that I would say are, let's see, who does this? I think it was MasterCard. They said that they send their employees to go to school, particularly ones that are on a management track. And when they work with these kids, first of all, they gain confidence. You forget where you were when you were 15. And let's say this new employee is 28. Well, now they're looked up to, right, by these kids. They've become the expert. They have to become the educator and talk simply and be patient. It teaches leadership skills and confidence in some of these sort of employees that are on a track to leadership and management. There's sort of an element of character that is that you gain when these kids look up to you and rely on you. You don't want to steer them wrong. You're humble and you care, and you bring that back. So there's sort of many residual benefits that's kind of hard to imagine.
Yeah, because I'm also there. I mean, you gave that story about Pfizer where it was easier to employ people, but it's also it's going to help with your external marketing as well, because if you're giving people the face of the business, or the business is getting a face or a personality, then these millennials not only just want to work for them, but they're also going to want to buy from them.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. Definitely consumers look to companies that are doing some good in the world.
So with Starbucks, not just employing people, but also being able to sell their product, because people say that they're not just about making money; they're also about making a difference. I think it's a great thing to be able to promote. Now, tell me, if somebody wants to get involved in mentoring, because this program, the nifty program, which is NFTE, is not. I don't think it is available in Australia. We're saying it's not available in Australia. How would somebody go about, do you think, being able to start to commit some time and getting involved in mentoring these younger generations in schools?
So that is a good question. So I have written this book. I'm going to plug it now. Okay, you ready? Here's my drum roll.
You go for it.
The book is written in sort of three simple segments. The first is why mentor, and I've interviewed 5 corporations. I have more corporations I've interviewed actually on my blog, just to hear some of the things we've just talked about. Why do they do this, and what's in it for them? And I've gone on to talk about what's in it for the individual that is sent out to mentor. And then I've gone on to say, why is it good for the student? Like some of the Gallup studies, some of the research, some of the foremost research on child education and why mentoring is good for youth. So that's why. But then ultimately what I wanted to get to is how. And I need to say this to you, Ben. I've written this. I'm a business person. I'm not a psychologist. I've done copious amounts of research, but I wanted to simplify this and make it easy for everybody to be able to do this. So where have been in business and Nifty worked for me, there's no reason any kind of professional can't share their knowledge, particularly even thinking about retirement. Many companies actually use their retirees as ambassadors to go mentor. So it doesn't have to be just while you're at work. It can be a way to link the people that you're phasing out to still represent your company out in the community. So that's sort of another idea on this. So the how section really goes through step by step. And it breaks it down for somebody who might be timid to do this, because I have recruited many other professionals to come to class. And they've asked me, how do I do this? How do I talk to kids? What do I have that they would want to know? And that begins to explain this concept I've written about called project-based mentoring, that puts a project squarely in the middle between an adult and a kid. And once you have something to do, it brings them together and lets them focus on this activity. It's not just social or emotional. It's about projects. And the big business world functions around projects. So that's all mapped out how. And then getting to your question is where. So in the back, I have 40 pages in the back of the book that is a glossary of organizations and schools, nonprofits that are in the education space. I believe some of them would be in Australia, but certainly the conversation, the dialogue can be asked. You can go to a school, the community liaison division of a school, a community college, and you can look into nonprofits and stick your big toe in. Look at what are you comfortable with. I mean, most of my mentoring is done one-on-one. Most of the time, and I go in all year long from September to June. I go about every 2.5 weeks, and the teacher sets aside a few kids, and I meet them with I go with another fellow, co-mentor, And we do not meet in class. We meet in a library, in an office, in a cafeteria. So we meet the kids one-on-one and really work on their projects. So that's kind of that's the sort of layout I have here. So it requires a little due diligence, and I believe the book helps somebody step by step to go through how would I meet with the teacher, what would my role be, how do I talk with kids, how do I create a safe space for kids, how do I create the dialogue, how do I begin. So I really go into sort of the heart of it, and I'm trying to make it easy for anybody because I think everyone has too much to offer.
Yeah, and I think it's good you've come at it from a business ownership point of view rather than a business point of view rather than a psychological point of view, because it's going to make it much easier. Yeah, and whilst we're talking about Australia here, but we do have listeners in the US, we have listeners in the UK, and another 100-something countries. There's just not many in the non-English countries, but this could be applied anywhere around the world, and I think long term I can see that this movement that you've started here, Patty, is going to make a big difference.
Well, I hope so. I hope so. I've worked very hard to try to make it feasible and doable, and I'm really not doing this for gain. I don't have a business. I've seen it work, and I have too many beautiful letters from kids. As a matter of fact, I'm going to share this with you, if I may be so bold. Khalid is now about 22 years old. And he knows that he's in the book, and he's actually in my introduction. And he got to see the introduction before the book came out. And this is what he wrote me just about a month ago. Dear Miss Patty, I'm very humbled and grateful for your kind words. I do think, however, that your account does not do you or Mr. Phil, who's my co-mentor, justice. My business success is merely one of the dimensions of the impact you've had on me and my future. Your mentoring has provided me with a lot more than business training. You have provided me with life skills and lessons that never escape my mind, and for that I will remain forever grateful. I hope your book inspires altruism in others and motivates them to lend young people a hand. Not only does it provide young people with the guidance they need, but it also inspires them to return the favor to the next generation, creating a much-needed, never-ending cycle of friendship and support. Thank you for sharing this with everyone, and I look forward to reading the entire book. So he kind of blows me away.
Yeah, it's amazing, and well done to you. I think what you're doing is great.
Oh, well, thank you. I'm very excited to share it. I'm really grateful for you to listen, and I hope maybe we'll light a little fire under a few people to give it a whirl.
I'm sure you have definitely done that today. And we are just mindful we are just about out of time. But there's no doubt in my mind, Patty, that you have absolutely lit some fires in bellies for people to go out there and contribute in a way that will make a difference to the future, and close the skills gap and bring some of these practical things to people that are in school that aren't getting what they need practically now to be able to enter the real world after they leave school. I don't want to be disrespectful when I say the real world, but certainly there is a difference between sitting in a classroom and actually coming out and doing it. So great stuff you're doing. Absolutely great stuff you're doing. Now, how do people find out more? Where do they go if they want to get a hold of the book or they want to find out more about what you're up to there, Patty?
Okay, well, let's first give the title. The title is Teach to Work. How a mentor, a mentee, and a project can close the skills gap in America. It's very available online at Amazon or at Barnes & Noble. And anybody is welcome to go onto my website where I have lots of reviews of the book. I have blogs with additional companies. Like I just am excited. I just did one with Accenture, and I just have done one with SAP. And there will be more and more companies that are doing this. Like I want to shine a light on them for all that they're doing. The website is just like the book, www.teach2work and I welcome any input. I would love to hear your audience's experiences. So there's room on there to share, to ask, and to definitely read and learn. So I welcome the input, and hopefully we'll get some people mentoring with the kids that need it.
Yeah, great stuff. So teachtowork.com. Now, if you're driving along or you're on the treadmill in the gym and you can't write anything down, that's okay. You can go to businessbrainfood.com /144. It's BBF144, episode 144. So all the links will be in the show notes for this episode. So whether it's the book directly, or we'll put a link to the Amazon as well, and we'll have a link to the website and probably Patty's LinkedIn profile for you as well. So you can go and find out as much information as you need. Now, Patty, we are pretty much out of time, but I do want to say once again, thank you so much, not just for sharing this today on the podcast, but for what you're doing, because I think what you're doing is making a huge impact. And just, I mean, you've told us the couple of stories you've had and read out the couple of letters that you've received. You must truly be proud of what you're achieving, but also proud of what you've helped other people achieve. I think it's just an amazing thing what you're doing.
Well, thank you. That's the best. The whole reason is the letters from the kids. I mean, come on. If that's the end game, that's the ROI, right?
Yeah, mate. And that's I can hear, and I can hear in your voice how passionate you are about it. And getting those letters back is obviously that's payday. That's when you've hit payday. So well done and congratulations. Exactly. Now, all that we've got left to do is the 60-second scramble. Are you ready for that?
I hope so.
Yeah, I think you're ready. If you can work with kids in school and turn them into entrepreneurs, I think you can handle the 60-second scramble. So here we go.
All right, I'm ready.
Starting the clock. What's your number one tip for being more efficient?
Create a plan. Know where you're going.
Nice stuff. What's your favorite movie?
Of late, it is called The Untouchables.
The Untouchables.
Yes.
Do you have a hidden talent?
Jeez. I have a hidden dream of a talent. I wish I could sing, but
I've got that same dream of a hidden talent.
It is not there. I've tried.
I feel the same pain. What's your biggest addiction?
Probably mentoring. I love it.
Great stuff.
I love it.
Talking about mentoring, who is your mentor?
I'd say one of the partners in my business. We had a partner from Booz Allen that came into the construction business, and he was a great guide for me.
Nice stuff. Nice stuff. Do you have a favorite inspirational quote that you can share with the listeners to finish this one up?
Oh, I don't know it off the top of my head, but Eric Liu, I love this. Wait a minute. Do I have 2 seconds?
Yeah, of course you do, yeah.
We are all teachers. Teaching is the core of humanity. It is what life is all about, passing it on. Let's see. We teach to articulate for ourselves what matters. We teach to be sure that we have not lived in vain. We teach to learn. How's that?
No, that's beautiful. Love it. Love it. Well, on that note, Patty, thanks once again so much for jumping on the podcast. I know the listeners would have got a huge amount out of it, and I wish you all the best in the future. You're doing some great stuff.
Thank you so much, Ben. I really appreciate it. This has been wonderful, and I hope to meet you one day.
I'm sure we'll get you down under one day. We'll get you into Australia. You've got to come visit us. We're not that scary.
Well, anytime you come to D.C., Washington, D.C., home of you-know-who, I'll be there.
All right.
That's where I am.
Fantastic. Okay. Thank you. Cheers.
Thanks, Ben.
Edutaining with Business Brain Food.
Well, I've got to say, pretty inspiring chat with Patty there. And if you're not inspired, then I don't know what's going to inspire you, but that's certainly got a fire going in my belly, thinking about how can I do that? How can I give back? How can I go and mentor at schools? And I really do believe, because one of the things that I think is a failing right now in the education system is that there are people that are going into business that don't have any idea. And, as much as that's, they're going to learn on the way, it would be nice if they were a little bit more prepared. And typically we see people go and they do even business courses or trade courses, like you might go and get a trade certificate. They might teach you to be a really good tradesperson, but they're not teaching you how to run a business. And then people jump into businesses with little or no experience or no training, And that's, they come to us when they're too late. And unfortunately, we can help a lot of people, but we can't help you when it's too late. So I think it's a fantastic thing what Patty is doing. And I think there's definitely a big bonus or upside to people with experience jumping in and providing mentorship to those that are just starting the journey. I've got a business that relies on people being mentored, so I really am I'm a bit biased. But to do it at such an early age, I think it's an amazing, amazing thing. And certainly got me inspired, hopefully got you inspired. All right, so just a couple of things, housekeeping-wise, before we wrap the show up. If you haven't already, head across to the iTunes store, leave a honest review or rating, and take a screenshot of that, send it through to ben@maxmyprofit.com.au, and we will send you access to a 1-hour training on the 3 things that you must do on your website to make sure that your web visitors are sticking around and converting into leads or sales. And so it's pretty simple for you to do that. The other thing I wanted to remind you as well is we've got quite a few events coming up. Now, in fact, tonight, and if you're listening to this on the day it was released, it may be a bit late for you to do anything about it. But tonight we are running our first ever networking event in North Ryde or Macquarie Park in Sydney. So if you are Sydney based and you want to come along and hang out with us, have a few drinks, some light refreshments, and do a bit of networking, you can jump onto MaxMyProfit.com.au. Go to the events page. You'll see that there. The other thing that we've got coming up in September is a whole bunch of my seminars again on the eastern seaboard of Australia. Really popular series that I had last time. I'm going to redo the same series, Business Fast Track, where we spend a few hours together. I take you through the 5 stages of growing your business, or the 5 stages of building your business so it doesn't rely on you, because too many people build a business that relies on them, and then all they end up with is probably the world's worst job, a job that you can't take holidays from, you don't get sick pay, and it's stressful, and you're not making the money that you should. So what I do is I teach you the 5 stages of building a business that doesn't rely on you. Now, it's not for people that want a quick fix. I don't have a magic wand, so don't come expecting something that's going to change your life in a week. This is about me showing you the 5 stages that you need to go through over the next 2 to 3 years to build a business that does not rely on you having to work in it. It still relies on you to work on it and direct it and drive it, but it won't rely on you being there to do the day-to-day running of it. So that's this September 2017. So if you listen to this podcast after then, you may end up on a different page, who knows, but just go to businessfasttrack.com. That's all one word, businessfasttrack.com.au, and you'll be able to pick a venue near you and a date that suits you. I'm going to be in Sydney, Melbourne and Brisbane at this stage. May add some more events there, but go and check that out and come and join me for a few hours of learning and fun whilst we take your business to the next level. All right, that's it for this week's episode. Thanks so much once again for tuning in. I do love bringing you these podcasts each week. I suppose I'm giving them to you. It's like my gift. This is my gift to you. Anyway, hopefully things are going well in your business and you're making some money. Until next week, have a profitable day.
You can fly higher than the sky, shine brighter than the stars. You can have all you ever wanted.
The Business Brain Food Podcast is brought to you by MaxMyProfit.com.au. Head to MaxMyProfit.com.au to download your free business planning template or a copy of my ebook, Planning Your Path to Business Success.